Good evening, folks, and welcome to the debut episode of a brand new show here on the Cover One Sports Network. This is Cover One Football Weekly. I am one of your three hosts, Anthony Prohaska, joined tonight by Kendall Mirsky, also joined tonight by Mr. Russel Brown. Gents, how we doing? It's NFL Week 1. It was like a slow day, and then business picked up at like 3:15, 3:20, 3:30, and it's been kind of wild as we've rode through the back end of the 1 o'clock games into the 4:25 games, and here we are. Kendall, where do you sit right now? How you feeling after Week 1?
Well, I mean, the 4 o'clock games kind of like cooled me off relative to the ending of the 1 o'clock. I mean, that was just pure chaos to introduce us to the season. So it's kind of nice to get some, I guess, less blood pressure raising games.
Blood pressure lowering games?
I guess. But this Chargers Raiders game is going down to the wire a little bit. See if the Raiders can get the ball back here. Under 2 minutes left there. But I mean, ultimately a really great day, fun day to be back and introduced to Week 1 of the NFL.
Very fair. Russ, where is your head at right now as we sit here? I know it's a tough day for you as a Lions fan. Guys almost clawed it out, no pun intended. But how you feeling overall?
0-1, baby. Same old Lions. We're right back into where we left off every other year for my entire life. So I'm doing great. No, yeah, it's just, dude, it's the
so much anger. Screw the show.
Same stuff over and over again with that team. And I know we're going to dive into them at some point. But look, football's back. How can you not be happy? I was propped up on the couch for like 7 hours, and I was like, I should finally get up and do this show, right? Like, but no, I'm pumped to be doing this with you guys, and it's a lot different from probably anything that any of us have really done. Like, you guys have been so Bills oriented. I'm so draft oriented, so we can kind of dive in here together and make a trio of a pretty badass group.
Yeah, well said. Very well said. And that's a really good segue to, kind of just one quick note on this show. I know for those of you who are familiar with the three of us and familiar with the Cover One Sports Network as a whole, you know that we are a Buffalo Bills focused, sports network, in-depth analysis, film breakdowns, all 22 footage, anything and everything. But some of you might just be focused on the Bills, but it's always good if you're focused on the Bills to keep in mind that every other team in the NFL, if you're a Bills fan, is an enemy of yours. So it's important to stay up on those enemies and the game of football as a whole. If you love the Bills, you obviously probably have some kind of special spot in your heart for the game of football. We're going to help you learn more about the NFL and football as a whole in this show. If you are not a Buffalo Bills fan, you are new to this network, I want to start out by saying we are completely objective and unbiased in our analysis. Just because Kendall and I spend most of our time covering the Bills, we're very unbiased, very objective. Russ, as you mentioned, you are a Lions fan, objective, and you're also, really heavy into draft content and player evaluation and analysis. And so if you are a fan of a non-Bills team, don't worry, you're getting objective football content here on this show. And it's good, again, just to keep up on the NFL and everything that makes the world go round. And speaking of making the world go round, we are going to start with our first game that we're going to break down today. One of the 1 o'clock games, and it involves the man who's on the graphic for this episode. The Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cincinnati Bengals. This game, the ending was wild in and of itself, where kickers, it actually kind of made me think of the Bengals-Packers game last year, where like nobody wanted to make a kick in Cincinnati, and that kept going to like the wire, and I believe that went to OT as well. This game literally goes down to the wire. Mitch Trubisky leads a game-winning drive, and the Pittsburgh Steelers take it 23-20 in Cincinnati. Let's start from the game, from the perspective as a whole, and Russ, we'll start with you. The Bengals, they put a lot of effort into their offensive line this offseason. It was a line that was, I don't want to say horrible because I feel like that's too disrespectful, but they were very bad last year, especially down the stretch. Burrow was constantly under fire, especially for a team that went to the Super Bowl. That offensive line wasn't just like a vulnerability. It was a large deficiency. Burrow just had no time. This goes back a little to the year before. Obviously, he gets hurt, completely blows up his knee. They spend resources in free agency to try and revamp that offensive line. But we're kind of in, I don't want to say a similar scenario because the Steelers are a bit of a unicorn with how good their front is, but Joe Burrow under siege again. Is that your biggest takeaway from the Cincinnati side of things in this game, or were you looking at something else?
Definitely that. I mean, 7 sacks is a lot for any quarterback to handle within a day's worth of work. But, I mean, they also turned the football over 5 total times.
Yeah.
And like, that's the crazy thing is if you eliminate the turnovers, this game probably doesn't go to overtime. They controlled everything from total yardage to time of possession. They had 432 total yards. They had almost 44 minutes of total offense or time of possession. And, if you just eliminate a pick six, if you eliminate a fumble, whatever it is, and you get points on the board, that game doesn't go to overtime. But, the Steelers defense looks legit. And like me as a fantasy football player, I'm like, man, I took the Cowboys defense, and why did I not take the Steelers defense? Like, I'm kicking myself right now. But man, Alex Highsmith, TJ Watt, Minkah Fitzpatrick, those three guys, fun all 22 to be able to break down later this week when it drops, because they had some one-on-one situations with those offensive tackles. Highsmith had 3 sacks in itself. Yeah. So that kind of goes to the original question. The Bengals offensive line is week 1 already in shambles. So we'll kind of see what happens throughout the rest of the season, but not a good start for an offense. I will say, fun fact though, this is the first time and only 5th time in NFL history, first time since 1999, where both teams from the Super Bowl lost in the first week of the season. That was the Falcons and the Broncos. So kind of saw a little history then.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Speaking of history, this is the debut episode of the Cover One Football Weekly Show. And just in case some people are new to the show or to the network, if you're joining us here live, please drop your comments into the live chat. Questions, thoughts, comments, concerns. If you have a game that you want us to talk about or touch on, or a player or aspects of these games that we're bringing up and diving into, if you want to talk about that, anything and everything. We love the engagement here at Cover One, and anything you got, throw it up into the chat. We love that engagement piece. And if you are here, please be so kind to, What is that noise? Who's playing something?
Not me.
There's no noises.
Am I crazy?
You might be. You might have.
Am I crazy? I'm hearing like Bengals
open.
audio in my ear. Whoa, that was wild. I was hearing Bengals audio in my ear. Nobody heard that?
No.
I don't have any other window open. I don't know what just happened. There's a ghost in my machine. But regardless, if you are,
it's the Christmas tree, bro.
It might. That's actually kind of terrifying. Like, I don't know what just happened. But regardless, if you are so kind, you're enjoying this content, please drop a like on this video. Kendall, for you, looking at this game, Bengals takeaway, Steelers takeaway, what is your bigger focus coming out of this victory for the Steelers? Are you looking at how the Bengals lost this game, especially considering, it's weird going to the Super Bowl, obviously, last year, but I don't think a lot of people are talking about them as like the cream of the crop in the AFC. So are you coming away from this game looking at things from the Bengals side and thinking like what they did wrong, or are you looking at the Steelers side of things and thinking what they did right to claim this game?
Honestly, way more about what it took for the Steelers to win and for the Bengals to lose. Kind of shift it in that kind of way where, kind of what Russ was talking about, where you remove one of those fluky turnovers and we could be talking about a completely different game. The fact that it took that many turnovers, that much defensive resistance from the Steelers, and their offense still couldn't put up more points with the field position that they got with all of those turnovers. So you'd think that game should be put away. And the fact that the Bengals were still there speaks to, one, their potency on offense, even with all the turnovers, and two, just how poor the Steelers offense was. Because if they can't get anything going with that kind of, I don't want to say defensive luck, because that defense is legit, but turnovers are a little bit fluky and you can't depend on.
It's hard to be sustainable with that.
Sustainable. Exactly. So that's where my focus shifts. It's more to, wow, it really took all of that for the Steelers to scrape away that type of victory. And is it going to rely on I don't want to say similar game script for the Steelers to win, because I think that's unreasonable to assume. I think they're a better football team than that too. But it does still speak a lot to, what is that offense going to look like with Mitch Trubisky leading it? When do we get to Kenny Pickett conversations? All that kind of stuff.
That's very fair. And on a day where, the Steelers were generating pressure, they were generating sacks, they were generating takeaways. Granted, Najee Harris goes down with a foot injury. We don't have any more details on that in terms of what's going to happen to him. But it's wild. Granted, there was overtime, but the Steelers had 61 total offensive plays to the Bengals 94. The Steelers had 267 total yards to the Bengals 432. And the Steelers had one more drive than the Bengals. The Steelers had 15 drives the Bengals had 14. So the play discrepancy and the yardage discrepancy, I think it goes back to Russ's point earlier. Like the Bengals were just continuously sustaining drives. They just kept kept turning the ball over, but then they turn it over, and the Steelers would do almost nothing with it. And it was carried by that Steelers defense. Minkah Fitzpatrick and Cam Hayward. Cam Sutton had a great game. TJ Watt had a great game as always. I think it's unfortunate that TJ Watt is playing in an era that also has Aaron Donald, because if not for Aaron Donald, TJ Watt's probably the best defensive player in football. A sack today, an interception today. Fair. Yeah, it's crazy what that family has produced in their genes and their bloodline. I don't know what they got going on. But TJ Watt news, potentially torn pec. You see him coming. I went back to, I think, the highlight when he came off the field, and you can read his lips that he's saying, like, I tore my pec. He says it multiple times, because the trainers and I think the staff is all like, what'd you say? What'd you say? And he's like, I tore my pec. I tore it. My pec, it's torn. And then we hear the reports that that's what it potentially looks like. That's most likely a year-ending injury when you tear your pec like that, unless you get some kind of deer spray situation like Ray Lewis got when he tore his tricep with the Ravens, and then you come back and you're a superhuman, which is possible in today's NFL. Especially, I don't want to doubt anybody in the Watt family because they're already kind of superhuman.
Yeah.
What does that do for Russ? I'm going to kick it back to you, because I'm thinking if TJ Watt goes down, this defense, it's a good defense. They're well coached and they have a bunch of good pieces, but with what Mitchell Trubisky is, and I don't want to say can be, because I think at this point we know what Mitchell Trubisky is. This defense and this team are going to be carried by the stars on defense, the Minkah Fitzpatricks, the Cam Haywards, the TJ Watts. If they're not making game-changing, game-wrecking plays, where does this team go from here? Because I just don't think that's a sustainable piece. To Kendall's point earlier, like, you can't win consistently week in and week out thinking like, well, you know what? We'll get 4 takeaways and things will be good and we'll be shipshape. If TJ Watt is done for the year, are the Steelers done for the year?
No, I mean, I don't think they're done for the year. I don't think you can write them off, because when you look at like their schedule, I was looking at this beforehand, they have the Patriots coming up next, and we just saw what Miami kind of did to the Patriots. Now, granted, thank you. There's no way we can sit here and say Miami and Pittsburgh have the same type of offense. We know that's not the same, but at the same time, you have a Patriots team that could not get the ball really going the way that it needs to be going today. Yeah. Their defense kind of got exposed. So if they can somehow squeak out a win like they did today against the Bengals, because I mean, they opened as 6.5 point underdogs today on the road. And I don't think anybody would have been like, oh yeah, Steelers are going to win this game. Nobody would have said that. And you could beat the Patriots. You could potentially beat the Browns. You have the Jets. You could potentially be 4-0 before you play the Bills and probably get absolutely mollywopped. But you're a 4-1 football team. Then maybe you play, the Buccaneers and you lose there. But you go down their schedule. It's winnable. There's games that they can win. The Falcons down there, the Saints down there. Could they beat a team like the Browns twice? Could they beat the Bengals again? So I think a guy like Alex Highsmith, he had 3 sacks today. You're going to need a guy like that to step up. You have the guys in the middle, the experience of Cam Hayward, and you mentioned Minkah. We see a guy like Witherspoon back there. Cam Sutton is back there.
Sutton had a great day.
Yeah, they've got some pieces. I think the key is, defensively they should be fine. It's going to suck, but offensively they've got to get that thing going. I mean, you can't have 13 first downs every week and expect to win. Like, you lost that 32-13. That's insanity to me, and you won that football game. So, as kind of Kendall said, when do we see the reins get turned over to Kenny Pickett, if at all? I don't know. I would like to see him out there, because I mean, he's 24. You can't wait forever for this kid.
True. Good point.
You got to put him out there. And I mean, Mitch is Mitch. Like, he made some mistakes today. He played kind of his game. Didn't play poorly, but he played his game. So, yeah, I mean, it would be unfortunate for Watt. I think it definitely takes them from, let's say, if we thought they were going to be a 10 to 11 win team, maybe they're only a 7 to 8 type of win team. So we'll see. But if the torn pec thing is legit, I mean, as freakish athletes that the Watt family is, why can't this family stay healthy? These guys have the most serious injuries ever in football.
Didn't he also tear his pec, JJ?
Yep, absolutely.
I don't remember. I just remember the the elbow injury that's why he
Yeah.
still wears that kind of like brace
Bionic
thing.
arm.
They're crazy. I don't know what is in the water or milk that they drink. They make me think. I feel like they. Kendall, you ever seen Little Giants?
Of course, I've seen Little
Okay, I just want to
Giants.
make sure. Russ, I know you have. They just make me. I feel like the Watts as kids are just like a whole family of like Spike for the Cowboys, where like the dad's just like, go every night before he goes to sleep.
Yeah.
I rub his thighs with like fabricated cat's milk or whatever. Like I just feel like they're just like these geeked up, like monstrous 12-year-olds dominating. And then they grow up to be adult men and they're even bigger and more muscular and just absolute freaks. Yeah, it's that time of possession piece. I just want to go back to that, Russ, because it really is nuts. Like the Steelers won this game, obviously in overtime, 23-20, and took almost every single minute and second of overtime to do it. The Steelers had the ball for 26 minutes and 17 seconds to the Bengals 43 minutes and 43 seconds. You got outpossessed by 17 minutes. Like that's unreal. And then you come and you get the win, but it's because of the takeaways.
Yeah, well, and the other thing too, I mean, we mentioned it. Najee got hurt; he got dinged up. So I think obviously that hurts you into a degree, and that's why Chase Claypool had 6 carries for like 40
leading rusher,
yards,
36 yards. Yeah,
mind blowing. And it's like, so I think they have to figure out the structure of their offense. And I think the Najee injury, I mean, TJ Watt's injury is brutal, but the Najee thing, that's going to linger all year. And I think that's going to hurt this team offensively more than anything else, because now you don't have somebody that you can hand it off to 3-4 times in a row and keep that opposing team off the field. Like, can you trust Jaylen Warren? Maybe. I mean, nice player out of Oklahoma State, but can't compare him to Najee Harris. So it changes the structure of your offense. You need a guy like Mitchell Trubisky to come out and prove that he's kind of the guy better than Kenny Pickett. And you can't really do that right now because you lose a key focal point of your offense, probably your best offensive player in Najee Harris. So I think that's the bigger storyline here.
Quick question for everybody here in the group and for those in the chat. Kendall, you're going to be the one to answer first. He's on the graphic for this episode. Minkah Fitzpatrick. Is Minkah Fitzpatrick the best safety in the entire NFL?
Well, I mean, he's paid like it, and he's still young. So I think if he's not now, he certainly could prove it by the end of the season. And I think it's fair to have a conversation about it.
Who's in that conversation? If it's not him, who is it?
I mean, that makes it even harder. Like, really trying to think of anyone that I would want to put over him is tough. I always lean towards the young guys, and that's kind of why I feel like Minkah is probably the one for me. And it is because of what he's shown to this point in his career from just a playmaking standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, a versatility standpoint. He can line up in various ways and do multiple things for you on defense, but just as that traditional safety role you saw today on the interception, I mean, the way he played that cover 2 without so much depth and he stayed hugged onto that corner route and jumped it. It was just that superstar playmaking stuff. And he does that, but he also can make plays near the line of scrimmage. He's just very versatile player, still someone who I would consider on the rise. So, I mean, he's paid like it. Maybe we should start calling him the best safety in the league.
I think he and Derwin James are up there for the top 2. And I asked this question because and Russ, I want to get your thoughts as well. I think Minkah Fitzpatrick is the best safety in football just because of him being he's such a plus matchup everywhere. You want him to be your post safety, single high? Cool. You want him to function in a split safety world? Cool. You want him to drop down and cover in the slot against tight ends and or slot receivers? Cool. You want him to blitz? Cool. You want him to fit the run from depth? Cool. You want him to fit the run from the box? Cool. He does everything from a plus matchup standpoint: coverage, physicality, the football IQ, the tackling. I think, as people who cover the Bills, we're blessed to have, I think, the best safety tandem in Buffalo with Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde, considering you have 2 all-pros back there. But from an individual standpoint, I know Poyer had a great year statistically last year and on film. But when you watch the Steelers and you watch what's asked of Minkah Fitzpatrick, combined with the fact that he puts points on the board and has that ball hawking playmaking ability, for me, he's the best safety in the league. And I think Derwin's close because he has some chess piece potential, but Minkah is my clear number 1. Is he for you as well, Russ, or you think that's too much?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I when Miami traded him, I was like, what are they doing?
Yeah,
like,
that was weird.
Like, you didn't want to pay the guy. Now you're bringing in all these names and you're overpaying these guys. And you have a key piece in your whole team, and they let him go for basically nothing. It was just a first-round pick, I believe.
Yeah.
And he goes to a perfect place that, as we know, history speaks for itself. That's a defensive-minded organization.
Yeah.
History shows great defense year in, year out, and he's a key piece. So it wouldn't surprise me, if, as you guys mentioned, versatile piece. If the Watt thing is severe as it is, it wouldn't surprise me if he played a little bit more down in the box. And maybe they bring in they kind of change up their front a little bit. They bring in 4 and 5 defensive back sets a little bit more. We see a lot more nickel and dime stuff from them, and just hope that a guy like Minkah can play down in the box, blitz off the edge, and maybe that gives a guy like Alex Highsmith a lot more one-on-one situations, because that's going to be the next guy to kind of feast off the edge. I'm just thinking out loud in my head, of what it's going to be. I'm not
scenarios.
Yeah, right. I'm not Mike Tomlin. I don't know what he's talking to his boys. I don't know what's drawn up on the on the whiteboard right now, but that's the direction I would go. But yeah, Minkah number 1 for sure.
Very fair. I'm very interested to see what happens with. I think we kind of know what the Steelers are a bit. The only question really is what happens with the quarterback situation. Do they pivot to Pickett at some point? And how long is Najee Harris out for? What does that offense really look like? And then I guess the defense now with TJ Watt. But I think we have more answers and known quantities for Pittsburgh versus Cincinnati, where how long does the concussion linger for T. Higgins? And really this offense drives this team. An offense that last year they weren't overly complicated or sophisticated on offense. They were really just running like go balls and a ton of like 9-8-9 and just being like, well, you can't cover Chase and Higgins and Boyd, and Burrow's really good, so he's just going to find somebody at some point. And that's okay if the line can protect, or if the line can protect and Burrow is on point. And if Burrow's not on point, he was making those today in double coverage. And again, week 1 is always a little bit wonky. Teams don't know who they are in week 1. Chaos can happen at times. So, things happen. But I think if you're a Cincinnati Bengals fan, or if you're a Bengals player or in that building, it's a little disappointing to see how much effort you put into revamping the offensive line. And they got worked again in a game that the Bengals defense did their job for the most part. The Steelers couldn't really generate anything on offense, and the Bengals to come away opening week at home off of going to the Super Bowl, super deflating. But I think where they go is very interesting. Not that it's not for the Steelers, but obviously you got a team that went to the Super Bowl last year. So where do they go from this year, given that, they put so much effort in trying to get that one. They had one vulnerability and one deficiency. Like, you just had to fix one thing. And he kind of didn't. So
and they put the resources in, but it's not there yet. So
and maybe it will. It takes a little bit for offensive lines to gel from time to time. So maybe this is a different team by week 6, but definitely not a good start for the Cincinnati Bengals and what they wanted.
I will say this for Bengals fans as we probably move on to the next team or game or whatever we're doing. But I will say, if you remember the Chiefs, was it last year? They started off really slow, couldn't get it going, and then all of a sudden they won 7, 8 in a row. They click. And you look at a team like the Cardinals last year, they won 8 or 9 in a row, and then they've lost like 5 out of their last 6, lost in the playoffs, looked embarrassing. So it takes time to click for some teams. And I personally, I think I'd much rather my team start slow. Obviously, you want to get that first win, but I'd much rather start slow and see a lot of good things, lose a game like this where you shank a kick, you had a bunch of, mishaps like turnovers and things like that, things that are fixable. It's not like these issues aren't fixable. They can fix it, and I think they will. And I'm sure the Bengals will be just fine in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, we'll see what they're able to do and put together. I think this comment from Jason really sums it up well. Like, they say not to overreact to week 1, but it still counts as a win or a loss. Those things matter at the end of the season. I think that's the thing. Like, if you're the Bengals and you lose the division to the Ravens by 1 game, you're sitting there kicking yourself because of your week 1 loss to the Steelers, where if you had that win, similar to what the Bills had last year, you're sitting back going, oh, the Tennessee game, oh, the Jacksonville game. And that's a difference versus playing Kansas City at home in the playoffs versus being at Kansas City in the playoffs. Like, those are the games you kick yourself over at some point. And I want to bring up the super chat. I brought it up earlier. From Chief O'Reilly, I'm guessing that's how you pronounce it. I hope. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for the super chat. And Chief says, brilliant idea by the Packers letting Justin Jefferson be covered by empty grass. It's not like he's a good wide receiver, and we'll take advantage of it. And I wanted to use that as we transition to the next topic here on this show, the Green Bay Packers versus the Minnesota Vikings. Well, let's start on that side of the ball. This was a defense that I was high on. Again, it's week 1. I don't think we're burying anyone or anointing anyone for anything. Let's make sure we continue to say that. But this was a defense that I think Jair Alexander is one of the top 5 corners in football. They have a tremendous secondary with the way Eric Stokes played last year, versatile safeties and Adrian Amos and Darnell Savage. Then you add somebody like Quay Walker, who they haven't had that linebacker depth really, and you pair him with Devondre Campbell, who had an all-pro season last year, and then you got that front. I know they lose to Darius Smith, but Rashawn Gary is on the upswing, and Preston Smith is still there, and you got Kenny Clark on the inside. All these pieces, Joe Barry as their coach, who comes from that 2-high structure and scheme, and you've got good coaching, you've got good pieces, and they come out, and exactly to that point there, that comment, they just, Russ, I know you watched this game based on where we were, in our network. And Kendall, I know you saw pieces of it as well. I was just at a loss for how defensively unsound the Packers were. I don't want to take anything away from Justin Jefferson. It wasn't anything. He was just running like deep overs, and he would catch the ball and literally have like a 10-yard radius where there was no one. They didn't put Jair Alexander on him. It looked like they were staying in a lot of 2-high looks, post-snap, doing a lot of just quarters, and the communication was not there. I'm interested to get into the all-22 and see where the breakdowns were, but Justin Jefferson was running literally wide open, covered, much back to that comment there from Chief, covered by empty grass. Like, I don't know if it was game plan breakdowns or player breakdowns, but just the Packers defense, we're going to get to the offensive side of the ball in a minute, but just not a good game from the Packers defense considering how good Justin Jefferson is and what you have to look out for. Russ, thoughts?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I didn't know that was going to me. Yeah, no, I've honestly looked at this before we get into Minnesota, I looked at this Green Bay offense, and the way that they played against the 49ers in that playoff game is exactly how they came out in the first half in this game against Minnesota and even finished the game. It's very clear there's a disconnect somewhere. They could run the football. They would stop running the football because that's just kind of how their offense has been for so many years with Devontae Adams. It's very clear he's not there. First play of the game, Christian Watson runs that beautiful go route right through his hands. And Aaron Rodgers just, does his thing. And I don't know if you guys just heard that. The Packers audio was playing in my speakers. Did you guys hear that?
No, I didn't hear that. What is going on? What is happening?
What is happening?
Things are playing for all of us at different points. No, we didn't hear anything. I don't know.
I'm looking. I'm like, why is that happening?
I don't like what's going on.
The show's haunted.
But
no, they finally went into the second half, got the run game going. Aaron Jones, AJ Dillon look like they are kind of the focal point of the offense, as they should be. Those guys can run the football. They can catch passes out of the backfield. It was nice to finally see Romeo Doubs starting to heat up in the second half. But to me, it's clear. You can tell when Aaron Rodgers just doesn't want to throw the ball to a guy. He does not want to throw the ball to Christian Watson. He
was so pissed at him because he dropped that perfect goal ball in the beginning. They went from Watson to Rodgers, and Rodgers was just with the nastiest side eye glare, and I was like, oh, he's never going to throw to Watson ever again.
Yeah, and then later in that game, Romeo Doubs, it looks like he was supposed to maybe run an out. He ran it in, and Rodgers throws it, and it's a disconnect. He runs over to Rodgers, gives him a tap on the back, and at that point, he had only had one catch. He ends up with 4 receptions for the rest of the day. So, it's one of those, it seems like he gets it. He understands what they're preaching. I don't know if Christian Watson really gets it yet. So, man, I don't know. But defensively, they look like just an absolute mess, disorganized. Guys are in the wrong spots. Guys aren't in the, in the right run fits. And then, you look at just the passing game. It's the same thing with Stephon Diggs. He matched up with Ramsey on Thursday night, and he torches them. And I don't know if there was disconnects with the safety help over the top, if he just, not enough man coverage there. If Ramsey was locked up man on man with him a little bit more, would that have been different? Same thing here. If Alexander was matched up man on man with Jefferson a little bit more, would it have been different? I don't know. But overall, he just had his way with them. And the same thing with Dalvin Cook and Madison running the football. Both those guys averaged almost 5 yards a carry. And if I'm the Packers right now, seeing that from the playoff game to now, I wouldn't hit a panic button week 1 because there is young receivers in this offense. But watching that defense getting torched the way they did against Minnesota Vikings of Kirk Cousins, I would be, what is going on? Like, I would be, if I was a Packers fan and like I know how I expect my team to play, I'd be freaking out right now.
This is kind of like a pattern for the Packers in starting like poorly under LaFleur. They didn't start great a couple years back, although they won. And then last year they get absolutely trounced by the Saints in week 1 of the 2021 season and then go on to be the number 1 seed in the NFC, although they lose to San Francisco in the NFC Championship. Just from a, like, when teams understand there's, and you see it a lot more in college because it's hard for the players to adjust, but when teams feel like they have a matchup advantage, they'll spam that matchup, whether it's a concept or whether it's a player. And the Vikings, again, the Packers are in theory, a well-coached defense with good players, both from an individual talent standpoint and also that fit the scheme. The Minnesota Vikings, okay, offensively, this is just wild. Justin Jefferson had 11 targets. No one else had more than 5. Jefferson had 9 catches. Adam Thielen was second on the team with 3. Justin Jefferson had 9 catches for 184 yards and 2 touchdowns, including a long of 64 and an average of 20.4 yards per catch. 9 catches, 184 yards, 2 touchdowns. Adam Thielen was second with 3 catches for 36 yards. They literally were just like, we're going to go play action and run these deep crossers and find Justin Jefferson. And it was just consistent and constant, and there was no adjustment. And knowing that head coach Kevin O'Connell comes from that McVay scheme and that Rams system, like, it's not hard to kind of put 2 and 2 together. And just, very, very disappointing performance from this defense. And Kendall, to go to Russ's point on the offense, they put up a graphic during the game, which I didn't think was like crazy, but it made sense given what we had seen through the third quarter and through like the first minute or 2 of the fourth quarter. Aaron Rodgers, for completions under 10 yards and attempts under 10 yards, he was 13 of 16 for 111 yards. For attempts over 10 yards, just over 10 yards, he was 0 for 4 with an interception. Only 4 attempts, 10 yards or more, and no completions. As you know, because we're going to talk about the Chargers and Raiders in a little bit on this show as well. Kendall, what do you feel towards this Packers offense without Davante Adams, and in terms of, how they have to adjust? Russ alluded to it, like, your best offensive weapons, or at least your most known quantities on offense right now, are Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. And now you have to shift towards more of this 2-back kind of offense. They're lining up Aaron Jones in the slot and trying to use him more as a receiving weapon and trying to get that rhythm. Do you think these struggles in week 1 against Minnesota are, because again, we are just in week 1, but do you think these struggles are just week 1 knocking off the rust, starters don't play a lot in the preseason, or do you think this is more of a systematic piece that's an extension of losing Davante Adams, who not only is the best receiver in football, but is such a focal point in this offense and security blanket for Aaron Rodgers? Do you think this is just kind of week 1 rust and they'll be okay? Or do you think this is something that's going to plague them all year, or maybe take a little too long for them to figure out?
I definitely think it's going to take some time because of how they decided to replace Davante Adams. And it's clear that the problem is more personnel based than anything else. Like, things change when you lose a player of that caliber, and replacing him with, a combination of Sammy Watkins and then 2 rookie wide receivers isn't necessarily going to patchwork that all together. Because, I mean, obviously it's not necessarily a sum of its parts type of deal when you're replacing one player. You need to get that, or a marginal comparison of that, as the replacement.
They kind of did what another team we're going to talk about later, like what the Chiefs did. Like, Chiefs were like, well, we can't replace Tyreek Hill with one guy. Let's replace him with like multiple people. The Packers kind of did the same thing, but the Packers guys are all more unproven.
Exactly. And like, I guess you could compare like a Watson to a Sky Moore a little bit, because, small school, good production, all that kind of stuff. But
projection,
I think it's going to take more time, and because of how Aaron Rodgers wants to do things, and you can just tell that he's missing guys. And I think, honestly, having Allen Lazard out that game is huge. Going against the pass rush like the Vikings, huge. I believe Bakhtiari was out. Am I wrong on that?
Yeah,
You're right.
he's
out.
just started to like practice over the last couple of weeks, but
Yeah.
I think people forget, like, he's one of the best left tackles in football, and he's
Oh,
just
yeah.
been injury plagued the last like
Yep.
4 years.
But missing those two guys and those replacements are all guys that Aaron Rodgers is not used to. I mean, his game is based on improv, flicking it off script. I mean, he can win on script. Don't get me wrong. I mean, obviously Aaron Rodgers is top 5 quarterback in the league, but that chemistry piece is missing right now. And it's going to take time with those young guys. And it is clear, like you said, Russ, that Romeo Doubs is closer to earning that respect and chemistry with Rodgers than Watson. It's like Watson's best play was that like end around reverse play.
Oh yeah, good call. Yeah, that carry.
Like and that's what he did at North Dakota State. Like
True.
It's the little things that he's going to have to learn to be a more nuanced route runner and wide receiver and learn how to be that type of guy in this offense. And I think Romeo Doubs was closer to that sort of product coming out than Watson was. Obviously, the ceiling is different with Watson, but that ceiling can't necessarily be reached if you never get on the same page with your quarterback. So that's really going to be the question for this offense moving forward. I definitely agree with the running game thing. Based on where they are personnel-wise in the wide receiver room, they should lean on that more. They have 2 studs at the running back position. Lean on that more and kind of squeak out what you can from the wide receiver group. Progress them slowly, and hopefully they develop by mid-season and you can get something going towards the postseason. But I think it will be a slow burn for the passing attack as they piecework it together.
Slow burn, I think, is a really good way to put it. Like I have faith that LaFleur and Rodgers, they'll kind of like piece this thing together and eventually they'll be okay. But are they going to be okay by like week 4, or are they going to be okay by like week 11? And like, where do they start
to be
to find
too
more
late
rhythm?
if it's week 11?
Exactly. Like, where are they in that season? But again, to Russ's point, I'd rather you find your rhythm in like early November-ish and ride that hot rather than find your rhythm in September and October. And then everybody knows who you are and they're able to scout the hell out of you. And come playoff time, you get beat with matchups like what's happened to the Packers the last couple of years. I just, with how in theory, like, I don't want to say how competitive the NFC North is, but Minnesota, I think, could surprise some people with, bringing in Ed Donatel as their defensive coordinator, who's got plenty of experience in that Fangio scheme the last couple of years in Denver, and the pieces that they have. I think that's a nice fit. You've got O'Connell, who's a good offensive mind. They want to use Jefferson in that Cooper Kupp kind of role, which he did a little bit today. Jefferson is a stud. Kirk Cousins, we all make jokes. He's not terrible. I think you can win with him. I don't think you're going to win because of him. You have a really good running game with Dalvin Cook and a backup running back. Daniil Hunter was a force today, which is huge. He was somebody who Bills fans are plenty experienced with because everybody and their mother was like, trade whatever draft picks for Daniil Hunter. Let's bring Daniil Hunter in, blah, blah, blah. Hunter looks sweet. Harrison Smith had a good game today.
Zadarius Smith was a good ad.
Yeah,
Jordan Hicks, man. Jordan Hicks.
And Michael Kendricks is a terrific linebacker, or Eric Kendricks, I should say, terrific linebacker. So I think the Vikings could make some noise. But the Lions, not even just because Russ is here, the Lions are scrappy. The Lions fight. Like, you're going to have to earn every victory against the Lions. Like, so the NFC North is a little more competitive, but the NFC landscape as a whole, I just don't know how long it's going to take for the Packers to be able to, again, put it together and kind of connect all the dots. And again, to Kendall's point, like, is it going to be too late once they finally do those things? I have faith that they will, but it's just going to be a matter of, when does it start to take hold? And maybe it's as simple as Lazard comes back and Bakhtiari comes back, and boom, everything's good and it's a nice, easy fix. I also think with what we talked about with the defense, so much of that, it seemed today, it wasn't being beaten like talent-wise. It was just breakdowns. I think you can kind of cure those breakdowns. Coach up, you look at the tape on Monday, just yell at everybody and tell them how god-awful and terrible they are, and hopefully everybody raises their game. You fix some things schematically. But they've got too much talent on that defense to just be blowing coverage as much as they did. Like, they blew coverage consistently.
For sure. And I'll add this. I have 2 things to add.
2 things.
So the Packers are going to play the Bears next week. And
Sunday Night Football, right?
Sunday Night Football. And I know we talk about, is it going to be next week that this offense gets going? Is it week 11, week 6? When is it going to be? I'm going to say that if I'm a Bears fan, I'm I'm buckling up because Aaron Rodgers is going to, be home Sunday night playing against your team that got kind of the luck of the draw, some bad weather.
We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about that.
Trey Lance, first start, whatever. We'll talk Bears and Niners here in a little bit, but you're getting Aaron Rodgers at his potential worst and then going to turn it into potentially some of his best, at least maybe his best performance of the season. It's still early season, but the guy's he's going to recover. He took, like the comments are saying, he got crushed on quite a few plays. The offensive line is banged up. If they figure that out, I think they're going to be just fine. But then the other thing I was going to say is we're not concerned about like Jordan Love just playing garbage minutes, going 4 for 5, 65 yards to end the game, right? Nothing to worry about there against some second teamers, more than likely.
No. Can't. Do you want it? I think you want to be.
No.
Do you want it?
Me as a Lions fan to like,
oh yeah, you want it. In your heart, you want it. No, I don't, especially too with like, I also feel like if that were to happen, like Aaron Rodgers would like burn the city of Green Bay to the ground. Like, I just think he would take some ayahuasca or whatever it is that he's doing in the off season and just
he's on
go
some stuff.
Yeah, he's wild.
Different.
But yeah, I don't with what they committed to him. I think you maybe if this season goes off the rails and they're sitting there at like 3-11, maybe I think we're starting to look at that. But I don't think they get to that point.
Yeah,
and I just think eventually. I mean, he's still one of the best quarterbacks in football. I think, like much like the defense on the offensive side, I know they have to work out the kinks. Davante Adams, and this is what I think people don't realize as well from like, I mean, we do, but like I feel like it's not necessarily known. Davante Adams was like patient zero for everything in that offense. Like everything ran through Davante Adams, whether it was checks or pass tags to runs or just the overall scheme and design of a pass play, like everything ran through Davante Adams. And suddenly that thing is gone for your offense and also for your quarterback who had this amazing relationship and chemistry with him. Davante Adams was a constant easy button and you had him paired with a Hall of Fame quarterback. And now you don't replace him with a wide receiver of, I don't want to say top caliber, but you're trying to patchwork it together like we've talked about. And then your best players are Aaron Jones and Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon. I don't know why that came. That's not even close to being the same person. Actually, AJ Dillon's huge. He could
that's
be
true.
Like, that's fair. So maybe that's why. Just overall huge dudes. But he is. His thighs are crazy. But I think a lot of it is you're just schematically trying to figure out how all these pieces fit together. Like, what does that rotation look like? Are you working Aaron Jones? Are you working AJ Dillon? And what does that relationship, that timeshare look like? Like, they were trying to use AJ Dillon a lot in the passing game out of the backfield, and it worked a bit, but I think that's not necessarily what they want to do. I think their hand was forced a little bit in that game. It's just going to be a matter of when they find their identity. There's too many good pieces and too many good coaching elements on this team for this team to just be a dud week in and week out. But the idea of Jordan Love being a thing is fantastic because I kind of just want to watch that situation burn. Like the Elmo, that gif of Elmo with the fire. And like that's what I just want to see. Like that would be absolutely hilarious. We're going to pivot to another 4:00 game. There was a bit of a barn burner towards the end, a little bit of a drama. Kendall, I know this was a big one for you. Chargers, Raiders. What's your biggest takeaway coming out of this game? Is it more Chargers focused with how they were ahead and what they did? We also saw some injuries in this game. Keenan Allen goes down, which sucks for them because they have a quick turnaround where they play the Chiefs on Thursday night. You know, you had this one earmarked all week. What's your biggest takeaway coming out of this game? Are you focused on the Raiders or are you focusing on what the Chargers did?
Definitely a lot more focused on the Chargers and how legit they will be this season. But the Raiders put up a good fight. Like, don't let that go shortchanged. I mean, them with Davante Adams is, good segue from Packers to Raiders. Them with Davante Adams is very real. Like, they have a new focal point in that offense that they didn't have. Obviously, the passing game used to run straight through Darren Waller, and it kind of seemed like he was the only option for them for a while, and then Hunter Renfrow emerges. So having a three-headed monster with those two and Davante Adams in a ground game of Jacobs, it is a real potent offense if they can get things going. But, Derek Carr and his inconsistencies in terms of decision-making, it just kind of continues to hold them back. But I do think Davante Adams has already seen a little bit of what life is like without Aaron Rodgers. I think there were a lot of throws that were left on the field today that deep ball that Asante Samuel Jr. intercepted, that very well probably would have been overthrown, if anything, by Aaron Rodgers. If that's a miss, it's overthrown in a spot where only his guy is going to get it. And Derek Carr underthrows it where Asante Samuel Jr. can undercut it and make up ground and get the interception. So I think he's going to quickly learn what life is like without him. But overwhelmingly, the takeaway from this game is really how legit the Chargers and Justin Herbert are. I mean, he is everything as advertised. Anyone that tries to tell you otherwise, don't listen to them. Dude, it's an elite level athlete, mental processor, all of it. Like, it is so spotless. I put out a tweet mid-game. I was like, he has been so good with his decision making. I kind of want to see the Raiders put some pressure on him because they really didn't put a lot of pressure on him most of that game. And his pressure stats last year were borderline anomalistic.
Do you think that lack of pressure, is that because you put that more on the Raiders, or do you think the Chargers, with, having a new person at right tackle and then having Zion Johnson at right guard in the draft, do you think the Chargers have fixed, granted it's one game, but do you think that lack of pressure in this game, because the Raiders got studs up front, they have a good pass rush. Do you think this is a positive step in the right direction for the Chargers offensive line, or do you think the Raiders were just ineffective?
It's 100% a positive step, but as a comment came in here earlier, it's just week one. Don't overreact to anything. Take it as what it is. It is a positive step in the right direction for a team that's been trying to rework this offensive line for Justin Herbert for a few off seasons now. Yeah. Obviously, getting their bookend at left tackle and Slater was massive, and then, following that up this season, obviously later with Zion Johnson.
Somebody who we all loved. Oh, yeah, like going that draft process. Yeah.
And he had some really great plays in the run game. He just knows what he's doing there. Very polished game. But I just really think from a holistic standpoint, and we really only saw this offense lose potency when Keenan came off the field with that injury. And even then, they were still moving the football. And that goes to show what they've built there around Herbert and the kind of offense that they want to run with. Like, this is a team that they just picked up that dude from Vanderbilt, Horvath. I think he's from Vanderbilt. I could be wrong on that. The fullback. This is a team that wants to show that they can get heavy, but then just run boots out of it and generate explosives. And they did it with consistency all game. So I think it's really exciting from that perspective. And then also seeing this defense with Khalil Mack and what they plan to do on defense was very, very encouraging, and that's without J.C. Jackson. So I think this team is going to be legit and to be feared in the AFC.
Russ, a similar question to you, but the Chargers had two big areas of weakness coming into this offseason. The offensive line, which really kind of cost them, I don't want to say the entire season, because it was apparent throughout the entire regular season last year that the Chargers' O-line was not good, but it really showed up in that kind of winner goes to the playoffs game in week 18, against the Raiders, where they just got owned and lost. And as a result, the Raiders went to the playoffs. And then they also had the defensive line, where they did not have the horses to run Brandon Staley's scheme and structure in front that he was trying to implement in Los Angeles the way he had done with the Rams. And so they come into this year and they bring in Sebastian Joseph Day, they bring in Austin Johnson, they bring in Khalil Mack. Khalil Mack is known, obviously, as a great pass rusher, but his ability to support the run from an edge presence is very, very strong and very stout. Yes, he showed up multiple times in that regard. Coming away from this game for the Chargers, Russ, are you focusing more on the performance of that new revamped defensive line for the Chargers, or are you focusing more on the offensive line, or is it equal?
I would definitely say it's equal for me because, you have to have both, at least to the best that you can. And when you take one of my favorite players in this last draft, in Zion Johnson, who I think can play, I think he can play right tackle. I think he can play guard. He can play anywhere you put him. And you bring him in here, and it allows a guy like Justin Herbert, who we've seen do phenomenal things with the football in his hands. And it's going to allow him to play better. It's going to allow a guy like Austin Eckler do his kind of thing out of the backfield, and allow really probably anybody to do anything out of the backfield there. But defensively, for sure, I mean, Khalil Mack, having 3 sacks today, the Chargers defense as a whole has such interesting pieces to it. Yes. A guy like Kenneth Murray, who has never truly become like that stud LB1 that you thought he would be, but still a pretty good football player in the middle of that defense. You have Derwin James. You have Nazir Adderley, who can kind of be that single high cover one type safety if you need him to be, because he's got that range and ball skills. You've got a guy like Kyle Van Noy on that team now that has got experience. You've got a guy like Morgan Fox who's got experience. You've mentioned Austin Johnson. You've got our son, Asante Samuel Jr. there on the outside.
They draft JT Woods to maybe go with like more 3 safety looks at some point too, or like have that depth there.
Yeah.
Like they've got all these cool pieces.
Yeah. And you don't even have JC Jackson there, like you guys mentioned, but Drew Tranquil, kind of that box safety down in the middle playing linebacker, maybe in a little bit of a nickel role at times. He had 5 or 6 tackles today. And it's like,
a pick.
And a pick. And it's like, that guy wasn't a sexy pick, but he's a good football player, just smart kid. And it was going to take time for him to develop. But it seems like the pieces that they've had to kind of, as we call them, balls of clay, and kind of form them into things like the Kenneth Walker and the Tranquils and all that stuff. Those pieces are coming together. You have a guy like Joey Bosa, who's a superstar. And now you have a guy like Khalil Mack to kind of help take it and put it to the next level. It's great to see for the Chargers. And like, if I'm a Bills fan, and I know we're not focusing just on the Bills, but if I'm focusing on AFC teams, I would be a little bit like, okay, I got to really focus on this team. And maybe I think there was a graphic this summer that talked about like the AFC West and, Russ with the Broncos and Pat Mahomes with the Chiefs and Herbert with the Chargers. And then like Derek Carr wasn't even like on the graphic.
Oh yeah.
And it was like, and it's like the Raiders weren't even a thought. We know Devontae Adams is going to ball out no matter where he's at, who's his quarterback. The only difference is he's going to ball out with an L or he's going to ball out with a W if he has a guy like Aaron Rodgers. And that's the difference. The dude had 17 targets today.
Yeah.
17 targets. Like, that's ridiculous. And Derek Carr is just going to Derek Carr. He had 3 picks. Like 3 picks.
Devontae Adams, to piggyback on that. So 17 targets. Waller and Renfro were second with 6 each. Yeah. And Adams had 10 catches, 141 yards, and a touchdown. Waller was second in terms of receptions and yards with 4 for 79. Waller is a stud, and Hunter Renfro is a very, very talented slot receiver. Both have good rapport with Derek Carr as well. And Adams just came in and just dominated the target share, for better or for worse, for
46% of it.
Just nice percentage. I'm horrible with percentages. Just absolutely dominated target share,
man.
Well, you should have taken the credit and be like, I did it in my head, and just came over and just dominated that target share. And honestly, he looked very good. And, I want to get to the Raiders in a minute, but I was just really, I already have a high bar for Justin Herbert. I think he's a really good quarterback, but he looked so in control of everything today. His pocket movement, his ability to evade, to step up, to sidestep, to drop back, just his rhythm in his drops in the pocket, his movement, his throws on the run, his ball location, just that one, the touchdown to Everett where he rolls out and he's rolling out to his left and he just turns and fires a rope and puts it right on Everett's hands as he's backing up into Teamer from the Raiders, and he just kind of falls backwards into the end zone. Like, just put it beautifully on a spot. Herbert is such a weapon, and they had such a problem last year with not staying ahead of the sticks, and they had the highest yards to go on third down last year. They were not able to stay ahead of the change. They went with a lot of quick game for the majority of the year, but especially on early downs, and it would leave them with like 3rd and 7, 3rd and 6 consistently. This game, they were able to deal with that a little bit more, despite losing Keenan Allen. Carter played well. They have apparently more depth in the running game now that Joshua Kelly is kind of asserting himself a little bit more into that role. Maybe that helps a bit. The Chargers are a very dangerous team. I think they were a good team last year that needed specific upgrades. And like comparing it to the Bengals, who we talked about, as we started this show, where it was like, well, the Bengals had all these offensive line concerns and they upgraded, but it's not really working out as of right now. The Chargers had specific issues. They upgraded and they're working out swimmingly. Like, they picked the ideal guys for their system based on scheme and structure. And it's just week 1, but it's worked out. And then you're going to add someone like a JC Jackson, who's a very good cover corner, especially in man. And you put him together with Asante Samuel Jr. and Davis back there as a depth guy, and someone who was a huge free agent love of mine this year, Bryce Callahan. There was that one rep. Callahan's one-on-one with Renfrow in the slot and just locks him up. If he's healthy, which also helps because you have all this depth at the corner position, maybe not high end depth, but depth regardless. You don't have to lean on Callahan too much. Maybe he stays a little healthy. He can also play a little outside. Very excited for what the Chargers can potentially do. Just so much explosion everywhere, defensively, offensively. Like they can beat you with quick game offensively. They can take shots and beat you with explosives. They can potentially beat you with the running game now with what they got in the backfield and then the upgrades on the offensive line. And then the defense, if they're stout against the run, that's all they were missing. They're going to be able to turn the ball over. If Derwin James stays healthy, he's a huge chess piece on defense. You got this pass rush coming from the outside. Now you got the scheme fit up front, as we mentioned, with Joseph Day and Austin Johnson. Very interested to see where they go. And for the Raiders, it is going to be I'm very interested to see where this Raider team goes and how they fit. You got a new coach. You have a new piece in Devontae Adams. You have a team that I think really overachieved last year, especially with everything that happened early in the year with Henry Ruggs and then John Gruden. They still go to the playoffs. Honestly, you could make the case that they kind of got hosed a little bit on some bad calls against Cincinnati in that playoff game. Who are they and who do they become? I'm very interested. And if I have a go ahead.
I just have a question for either one of you or both of you, actually. But, when you look at Justin Herbert and what he was able to do today, 26 to 34, 279, it just goes to show, and I guess, how do you guys feel about a guy that didn't have to target a guy like Mike Williams 17 times like a Devontae Adams? He only had to target him 3 or 4 times today. Mike Williams only had 2 receptions. And I'm not a salty fantasy owner or anything, but whatever. But you have all these targets. You have 9 receivers with 2 receptions or more. 9 weapons, I guess I should say, with two receptions or more. How do you guys take that in as far as Herbert as a quarterback, this offense? I mean, we're seeing guys like Trey McGiddy getting involved in here. We're seeing all these different names, like Keenan Allen. Sure, he got banged up, but like, is that like part of the game plan, you think, or is that just like speaking volumes of a quarterback like a Justin Herbert?
I think it speaks to how Herbert plays the quarterback position. He doesn't throw to necessarily his personnel or where the best matchup is all the time. He'll throw to where his reads take him more times than he won't. Sure, he's going to take the matchup every now and again, that one-on-one fade ball in the red zone every now and again. But for the most part, he's going through his reads and he's finding who's open rather than his best target.
I would agree. Herbert is one of those few QBs, and there's a couple of highlights of it last year where he gets from like 1 to 4 in the progression. Like he gets to everybody. You see him go like first read, second read, third read, fourth, boom, and then throws it on a dart with that cannon that he has for an arm. I obviously it's a mix of both. It's got to be the design of the offense and the play calling obviously plays a role. But I attribute a lot of it to Herbert. I think he's one of the few quarterbacks in the NFL who is a true progression style quarterback in terms of he can read the entire field. He can read coverages. He's good at adjusting post snap versus what he saw initially and how his routes fit within that. He, again, like just the ability to get to, you don't see a lot of quarterbacks successfully in the NFL get from 1 to 2 to 3, let alone 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. Also within that, I think that speaks to something we talked about earlier. You need the time to be able to get from 1 to 4. So the offensive line protecting helped out. But yeah, I think that's a lot of that is Herbert, especially with, and I'll give him even more of a kudos because when Keenan Allen was in there, he was feeding Allen early. Allen goes down and it was like, he was just like, okay, I'm just going to read this thing out every time I drop back. And whether he was under center, whether he was a gun, he was just reading everything from however many levels of progression he needed to. I give Herbert a lot of credit for his ability to disperse that ball around. Ooh, good talk. Very high on the Chargers. Let's go to one now. We talked about it earlier. I don't know how much we're going to dive into this one. I guess the main thing I wanted to focus on with Bears and Niners as we hit this game here, and Russ, I'll start with you. It's the same question for both of you guys, but Russ, you'll go first. How much are you taking away from this game? In case people don't know, an absolute torrential downpour hit Chicago. They put some new sod in on the field, and the drainage was awful. It was literally like a little pool with, I think, like 4 to 5 inches of water. They were like squeegeeing it with actual squeegees and brooms off the field hours before game time, trying to make the field playable. Horrible, horrible, horrible conditions. Not to take anything away from the Bears, but just atrocious conditions. And it's hard to really give true evaluation of a team or individuals in that type of scenario. We have Trey Lance's first game. It's his big debut. The Niners go to the NFC Championship game last year. The Bears are a team that everybody's kind of looking past. Russ, how much are you taking away from this game, whether it's a Trey Lance perspective or team's perspective as a whole, given just the horrid conditions and how many variables that presents?
Yeah, I think it created a lot of obstacles for probably both offensive coordinators, both head coaches to come out there. And, you have two quarterbacks that can run. Both quarterbacks can run a read option. They can do a zone read, and you can't really go within that offense as much as you would like. Now, it seemed like the 49ers were able to execute it a little bit better than Justin Fields was and stuff like that. But if you go to that too much, you go to the well too much, then the things that are happening downfield just kind of evaporate in a sense. And I think that's kind of what happened with the passing game. Things just didn't open up. And granted, for the Bears, I mean, they just don't have weapons offensively. I mean, Dante Pettis is out there, Byron Pringle's out there, and they overpaid for him. You got ESP out there. I like him, but he had one catch for 8 yards. Like,
and he's wide receiver 1.
He's supposed to be wide receiver 1. And it's like, so sure, I think the weather played a part in that, but I think overall, like, both teams just struggle to find how their offense is supposed to work because of they were putting too much into this read option, zone read stuff, handing it off. I mean, both teams had 37 carries, and the turnovers are key as well. I mean, Fields throws a pick, Trey Lance throws a pick. It was nice to see Debo out there, getting the football, 8 carries. Elijah Mitchell left the game; he was hurt, so. I think those are, some things that put the 49ers back. And, I don't think they really want to utilize Debo as a running back, but when the injuries happen and the game kind of happens the way it does, you don't have much of an option. So maybe the Niners viewed it as, hey, we're going to just scratch and claw. If we win, we win. But most importantly, we're just going to try to get out of this thing the best we can and just get on to next week when we get into maybe some dry weather.
Yeah. Trey Lance led this team in carries with 13, and a handful of them were just on scrambles of him running for his life from receivers falling down, and just they're trying to put a drive together at the end when they're down 9, and you couldn't even see what was going on the field because the camera was covered by so much rain that there was no visibility. So imagine what's going down on the field. Kendall, same question to you. Like, there's a lot of hype on, I would say more on Lance, I think, again, because the Bears are an afterthought. But regardless, whether it's Fields, whether it's Lance, how much are you taking away from either quarterback or either team with this game? Like, how much stock are you putting into this performance, knowing that it came in an apocalypse of rain?
That's exactly what it was.
It was terrible.
Yeah, it was real bad. So, I mean, I'd still put some stock into it. There's still some things that you can take away from the quarterback play and what these guys were doing. But, I mean, overwhelmingly, things were changed by the weather. Russ just mentioned it. Like once Elijah Mitchell went down, I think the 49ers' chances in that kind of weather really, really changed. Having to put Debo in at running back as much as they did, and the way they had to run their offense without Elijah Mitchell, I really think it lowered their chances in that game. But from a quarterback evaluation standpoint, I think there's one thing that's kind of really quick to notice when you watch both of these guys, and this definitely comes with the caveat of the weather. Like you said, receivers were falling down on routes and all that kind of stuff. But I think both guys were really quick to get off script and improvise. And that's something you typically see from young guys. And I think both of these guys will be able to live in this modern NFL world where you have to be able to operate off script. You can't just, I saw your tweet today, and you can't just be a statue anymore. You can win in the NFL like that, but a lot of things have to go right. And we're in a world where a lot of things get messed up by the defense because those guys are supreme athletes, and you have to have athletes on offense to mitigate that. So I think both these guys are built for the modern NFL world, but I think they need to turn that dial back a little bit back towards statue. And I think it's going to take some time, because I think Trey Lance was able to win on script a little bit more, but a lot of that has to do with your surroundings, the personnel around you, from wide receiver, pass catching, running back, and coaches. Like, all of the stuff around Trey Lance is just simply put better than everything that's around Justin Fields. And
Yeah,
I
very
think
true.
a little bit of that definitely impacts how he's able to operate on schedule in the offense. But there are still some of those tendencies to just be like, all right, my eyesight is on the routes in front of me versus, okay, eyesight is now on the rush and how I plan to scramble. And I think Fields is just a little bit quicker on that, and he's a little bit quicker to get to improv. And I think that is going to be his downfall this year. But at the same time, it's probably going to be equally his downfall to stick in the pocket with the O-line in front of him. So it's a double-edged sword for especially Fields, and I think we're going to get a much better evaluation of Trey Lance once you can see this offense in dry weather, like you said, Russ. I think that is an excellent point. Like, once we see that, I mean, this offense was crisp. You could see the 49ers offense had a plan. They knew what they were doing. Obviously, Kyle Shanahan-led team. You could tell there was just a systematic approach to how they were doing things. So I think they'll be fine. I think this game was just kind of an asterisk because of the weather and the conditions. But I think both quarterbacks definitely have room to grow and definitely showed a lot of encouraging things today.
And I'm glad you had so much to say about. Oh, go ahead, Russ. I was gonna say because I don't have much. This game pissed me off. The field was terrible. The weather was terrible. I was excited to see what
Trey. Because of the quarterbacks, like at a point, I was like, "This game's a flop."
I couldn't even see through. I couldn't see to the field for most of the game.
The thing is, too,
it was just a pool. I was like
Trey Lance had a chance to win the game for the 49ers. Like, the Bears went up 13-10, and immediately once that happened, the 49ers get the ball and the rain starts pouring even harder than it has.
It was a joke. It was like the weather gods were waiting, like, wait till San Francisco gets the ball, and then they got it, and he was like, let
exactly.
It rain.
That's exactly what happened. So that's why I'm holding a little bit more reservation on what to see from Lance moving forward. I think the jury's still out.
What did you have, Russ?
Yeah, and what I wanted to add was, we look at this team and, Elijah goes down, and for a team that has been so good at like developing late running backs in the draft or, undrafted free agents, whatever it is, like, Jeff Wilson didn't do much. He had, 9 carries, but he only averaged like 2.5 yards. And again, when the run's coming, you're going to stack the box, you're going to fill gaps, you're going to 2-gap, you're going to do whatever you need to do. And defenders are going to know how to stop that. And because a part of your offense is going to go flat at times. And that's what happens with the passing game. But, I couldn't understand why a player like Tyrion Davis-Price, Mitchell's been dinged up for a while. Tyrion Davis-Price from LSU was a 3rd-round pick for this team. And I watched him a little bit in the preseason. I thought he played very well during the preseason.
Yeah, a good preseason.
And holy moly, that's awesome. And
goodness, we got to stop. We know the rules. Elijah comes through. Thank you for being here, first and foremost. And thank you very much for the super chat. He says, thank you, Russell, Ant, and Kendall, for spending more time creating content for us. This is great. That's fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I saw the color in this. Wow, that's thank you so much. That's very generous. Really appreciate that.
But you have Tyrion Davis-Price, who had I thought a good preseason. I thought he ran hard. He made good cuts at times. And he was a coach's decision to not play today. So he was out. Danny Gray, who's another wide receiver option for your quarterback, he was a coach's decision not to play. And that's all in meanwhile, while George Kittle is listed out because he can't play because of a groin or a hamstring. And it's like, Kyle Shanahan, I just can't understand. He did this with Trey Sermon, and they let him go. They waived him, and you drafted him pretty early in the draft, and you didn't play him last year. And we were waiting for like Sermon to take over, and now Elijah Mitchell's dinged up. So it's like, will we see Tyrion Davis-Price next week? Maybe. And maybe they do this to prevent injuries. Maybe they knew the forecast and are like, hey, I'm not going to risk getting this guy hurt. If we lose to the Bears, we lose to the Bears. I think that's a dumb philosophy, but I guess, I don't know, but it's just very interesting the way that they kind of structured their offense and really their roster for this game with some of the coaches' decisions, the players that were out, and the overall plan of attack, considering the weather and really with Trey Lance having his first start, I would have been like putting a bubble around him as much as I can before unleashing the beast, if you will.
And that's the thing that I think is like last year it was Shanahan with Ayuk, who had like a good season the year before. And then like Ayuk was just like in the doghouse, and eventually he like got back out. Shanahan just every year there's just 1 to like 2 or 3 guys that they just have a bunch of talent. For some reason, we also know Kyle Shanahan is very like particular and very specific with what he does like. And there's so much required of his players in his offense. You have to know so much and you have to execute. So if you don't, he gets very perturbed, he gets annoyed, and it's easy to get into his doghouse. And yeah, I think it leads at times for him to, you see it manifest in whether it's, start sits or his player usage, because again, like they get into his doghouse for whatever reason, and players that most people will be like, I'd love to have this guy on my team. Kyle Shanahan's like, I hate him and I'm not playing him because he.
I think his dad was the same way. I think his dad was the exact same way.
I could see that.
I could be wrong, but I'm fairly confident. There's like a documentary talking about maybe it was like Terrell Davis or something like that, and he mentioned something about how he wasn't the starter in Denver, and because Mike Shanahan didn't like a certain guy, he ended up getting the starting spot. And it just kind of happened for him. I think it's, or
Mike
maybe
Shanahan is just like, I don't like you. You're out. I don't know anything about you. You're in because I don't not like you.
Pretty much.
Oh,
These Shanahans.
The Shanahans are a weird bunch, but I mean, they get results. So
They do.
It's hard to argue. Someone else who got results today, Kansas City Chiefs versus the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, we can touch on the Cardinals for a bit. I want to speak on the Chiefs for this one reason. I mentioned this several times in the offseason. I also put out a tweet today about it. I understand the loss of Tyreek Hill. That you can't spin that into a positive. I mean, I guess you can. If like the Chiefs put up like 50 points a game, then it's like, oh, this was all for good. But that's a loss. He's explosive. He's a tremendous athlete. He's a very talented football player. You can't spin that as anything other than a loss. But I think people took Tyreek Hill leaving and thought, well, this Chiefs offense is going to fall off a cliff and they're going to be no more, that this is going to be like a bottom 20 offense and they're going to have all these problems. And like you saw all the jokes of being like, oh, like they lose Tyreek Hill and they think like Marquez Valdez-Scantling can replace him, or Juju Smith-Schuster, like ha ha ha, or oh, McCole Hardman, ha ha ha. And again, a loss is a loss. It's hard to replace someone of that ilk, and I don't think you can. But I think lost in all that was, you still have the best quarterback in football in Patrick Mahomes. You have a terrific coach and game planner and play designer and play caller in Andy Reid. And you have a very, very, very good offensive line. And then still within that, you've got Travis Kelce. Juju Smith-Schuster, for all the TikToks and the jokes, when he's the number 2, he's been a very productive and good receiver in his career, and he fits within this scheme. Valdez-Scantling is a good support piece. You've got Sky Moore. You've got Hardman. Then you add in the pieces of them starting to use more 2 tight end sets like they did towards the end of last year. And then they come in and they do it again today. Just a variety of formations and alignments and personnel groupings. And they absolutely torch the Cardinals, who, again, you can play devil's advocate and say the Cardinals defense, that's not your cup of tea and you don't think they're good, whatever. Patrick Mahomes, 30 of 39, 360 yards, 5 touchdowns. And for all these games that we touched on earlier, right? We talked about Adams' target share and Justin Jefferson's target share. But then we talked about, Russ, you brought up Justin Herbert spreading it around. Mahomes did the same thing. Kelce had 9 targets. Juju had 8. Valdez-Scantling had 4. McKinnon had 4. Hardman had 6. CEH had 3. Noah Gray had 2. A bunch of dispersion. And then the actual production, Kelce, 8 for 21 and a touchy. Juju, 6 for 79. Valdez-Scantling, 4 for 44. Edwards-Helaire, 3 for 32. McKinnon, 3 for 27. Mahomes just commanding this offense. I don't want to say that, again, they're not going to miss Tyreek Hill and that it's not going to be a problem. But I think everybody was kind of doing laugh out loud Chiefs like they're gone. And it's funny when juxtaposing the Packers, granted the Vikings defense I think is better than the Cardinals, but the Packers who were trying to find their rhythm after losing their number 1 guy, you juxtapose them with the Chiefs, who I don't want to say they didn't miss a beat, but they looked very well prepared to be this new version of themselves coming into this game. Russ, where do you sit right now on the Chiefs? Again, it's 1 game, Cardinals defense, so on and so forth, that piece. You need sample size, but a very, very, very impressive showing today from Patrick Mahomes in this Chiefs offense.
It pisses me off, dude. It's like, no, I mean, I'm with you. Like, they're just so good. And it's Pat Mahomes, man. He 5 touchdowns, 360 yards.
He's throwing sidearm again and making all these stupid throws and arm angles that aren't.
Yeah. You get a guy like MVS, Valdez-Scantling. I've watched him for years with the Packers. I'd see him drop passes like every 5th week. He'd be good for like four receptions for 80 yards because 60 yards came on a bomb and he scored. Then other years he's like not healthy. He's dropping passes, doesn't drop a pass, goes through the whole game, looks like a stud, solid number 2 with Juju, Kelsey up the middle, who is by far the best tight end in the National Football League. And
he was kind of, I don't want to say falling apart, but he looked like he was laboring through the season at points last year, struggling to get off the line. I don't know if it's week 1 and he's completely fresh, but he looked very comfortable and very athletic out in space again, similar to the younger version of Travis Kelce. Because again, he's 33. He's got a lot of mileage on the tires. He looked very good today.
Yeah, well, and then like even a guy like Jerick McKinnon, who like was basically a corpse and suddenly like comes out of nowhere and was it last year, the year before, something like that? He like he just comes out of nowhere off like their practice squad. And even though he had been in the league for a while, he was like on their practice squad. Clyde Edwards-Helaire got hurt. He pops up and now he's got like a significant role where he's getting to 10 to 12 touches a game. And like, that's the thing. Like they've done such a good job with Andy Reid of putting an offense together. They have their guys that are going to obviously ball out. And it seems like Juju and Travis Kelce are going to be the guys that get unlimited amount of targets and touches. But like MVS, he's going to get his 4 or 5 touches a game. McKinnon's going to get his 10 to 12. Edwards-Helaire is going to get his 10 to 12. These guys are going to get their touches and they're going to do their job and the best things are going to happen. And I guess, having a quarterback like Pat Mahomes, sure. But Cardinals defense banged up, their offense, but like their offense looked terrible. Like Marquise Brown was supposed to come over and like be 8-9 reception guy. Greg Dortch is the guy leading the way for him. They couldn't really run the football with any of like the running backs. Like James Conner didn't do much. Kyler Murray really didn't do much for a guy that seemed like last year at any given time he wanted to throw for 300 yards and 3 scores. He could. He couldn't. And the Chiefs defense that seemed to be very vulnerable at times last year, they had it all together today. I mean, Snead has been a great find for them, and Nick Bolton is starting to really turn it on. I didn't even know they had Carlos Dunlap. Like, nobody told me that before we do this show.
I actually didn't know that till now.
Yeah, they do.
He had a sack. Like, it's just, dude, they've done a phenomenal job. Spagnuolo's still the coordinator there, right? The D coordinator.
Yeah, Steve Spags. Cooking things up on third down and just being they're still going to be a problem.
They might have a top 5 defense when it's all said and done.
I also think too, from like someone put it in the chat earlier. MB41 saying the Arizona defensive coordinator should be fired after blitzing Mahomes on 54% of his dropbacks.
Arizona's defense is weird.
That's also the piece. Like, Mahomes kills the blitz. Nobody blitzes Mahomes. If anything, you want to blitz, you want to rush like 4 or 3, like what the Bengals did. Arizona's defense, their identity is blitz. Like, that is what it's been for the last several years.
Who's coming, who's going.
That's exactly it. And sometimes it really works, and sometimes it really doesn't. And when you're playing, like, this was one of those games where the matchup just was not right for the Cardinals defense. I think a lot of people were, roasting the Cardinals defense and how bad they are. They have some good pieces. I don't think they're as terrible as this game looked, but it's not a good matchup. Like, they are a blitz-heavy team. They like to bring in a variety of ways. That is their bread and butter on defense. Mahomes and the Chiefs absolutely murk the blitz. Like, it's not a good mixture at all. Kendall, when we're looking at this game for you, from the Chiefs' perspective, you looking at the defense? Are you looking at the offense? I think with Burrow going to the Super Bowl, Josh Allen ascending, Herbert, Russell Wilson, Devontae Adams, all these, there seemed to be like all these storylines in the AFC. And again, I think like the Chiefs kind of took a back seat, and they were like, you had the segments on TV, granted it's national TV and it's black, but a lot of it like, like, is Mahomes like descending? Are the Chiefs done? Like, are they the 4th best team in their own division? Blah, blah, blah. And they come out and just absolutely murk. I know the final score was 44-21, but it was not that close. Those were garbage time scores for the Cardinals. They roast the Cardinals completely. What are you focused on when you're looking at this Chiefs team? Like, again, another year where they seem poised to make a potential Super Bowl run early on in the year, and they just come out so hot offensively and defensively.
I think it's my focus personally is offensively. I think I had more questions on that side of the ball. I think obviously losing Matthew definitely raises some eyebrows, and you wonder how things are going to change in that regard. But I like Justin Reed a lot, and I mean, he had some kicks today.
His extra points were fantastic. Well, he shanked that one, but he drilled the first.
I like Justin Reed, though, so I'm not overly concerned about the defense. You talked about Nick Bolton. I think he's come along nicely, more so than that early rundown type of guy that he was pegged to be.
They get Karlaftis and McDuffie in the draft.
Yeah, exactly. So the defense isn't necessarily like a question for me. The offense was coming into this game. And granted, the things we just mentioned about the Cardinals defense maybe mitigates some of the high praise that the Chiefs should get. But I still think they answered some of those questions. Like, how is usage going to work for the pass catchers? Like, who's going to get target share? All of that stuff. It just seems like that same Chiefs offense, just you kind of dial back who's the focal point. Now you don't have two focal points. You have one, and then everything is getting shared other than that. And I think that's a good way to work when you have a quarterback like Mahomes, and he can operate in that in-between area of robotic, cerebral Herbert and hero Josh Allen. He can live in that middle ground and just kind of operate on both ends of that spectrum.
Just an absolute performance. Go ahead.
How would you guys rank these three quarterbacks? Justin Herbert, Pat Mahomes, Josh Allen.
Oh, I can go first easy. Mahomes, Allen, Herbert.
Okay. I mean, that's what I would do.
I wouldn't. I think I'd go Herbert, Mahomes, Allen.
Whoa.
Yeah. I think I would.
Spice.
I really like.
Time out. Backtrack. Kendall, is Justin Herbert your number one quarterback in the NFL?
I think he would be, yeah. I told you, youth reigns supreme for me.
That's not bad. That's not bad for. I'm not saying whoa because I'm like that's a terrible take.
No, it's hot though.
It is hot. It's spicy.
I'm writing this timestamp down.
I was saying, mark this. Whoa.
Look, here's the thing. I think you see a lot of the things with Herbert where you see the cerebral attacking mindset that he has. Yes. He understands how to see the field and attack the field, but he can also do it athletically, off script, all of that stuff. Mahomes, like I just mentioned, lives in that middle ground. Allen's higher end is higher than both of those guys. I just always, and I think this comes from my Billsy nature of just watching the drought and always assuming the worst, but I think Allen's type of play has yet to be shown as sustainable to me. And he's proving it year after year that it is sustainable, but it's still like that type of play is less sustainable than the type of Herbert breaking down and reading defenses. That's why it's kind of a flavor for me, I guess, that I would pick as number one.
Man.
Yeah.
I
like the methodical offenses. I don't know why.
That's fair.
I'm with you there. I can't disagree. That's
Russ, where do you have them though? If you had to rank those three quarterbacks?
You didn't give us yours. No, you said it was the same as Ant.
Same as me. Mahomes, Allen, Herbert.
Yeah.
I just don't think you can put and again, I really like Justin Herbert. And obviously I like Josh Allen. I just don't think you could put anybody above Patrick Mahomes. He just, whether it's like kind of reinventing himself or functioning, we got to go like quick game this week. Cool. We're doing underneath throws this week. Cool. We're going intermediate. Cool. We're doing boots. Cool. We're doing straight drop back play action. Cool. We're going for explosives. Cool. I got to do some progressions. Cool. Like, not to mention the off platform throws and changing arm angles. Like, I just don't think there's anything he really can't do.
And I think with those three quarterbacks, like they are the only three in the league that can genuinely be this like almost same comparable size, height, weight type of perspective.
Yes. They're in a similar mold for as much as they're different. They're in a similar new age quarterback mold.
Yeah, but they all kind of excel in like their own type of style. And I don't know. I think the one that would terrify me the most though, if I was like a defensive coach in the NFL, would be Josh Allen, because I literally think he would be the one that would run down the field and punch my guys in the face. Like, literally,
that's the other piece.
He literally is.
Like if that's where Allen comes for me. Like there's what he can do on the ground with his legs, whether it's off script or by design.
Yeah.
Like Herbert's mobile, and so is Mahomes. But Allen is just like a mobile power running quarterback. Like the touchdown where he extended against the Rams, like
he literally dunked on Bobby Wagner.
He dunked on him. Like he dunked on a defensive player who wasn't like a defensive back. Like he dunked on a large human designed to shut him down. Like there's just like Mahomes can't do that. Herbert can't do that. Now they both can do things that Allen can't. But Allen's dual threat ability is just such a variable. That's why I put him 2, as much as I love like Herbert's processing and his ability. Yeah, and it's funny because I think they all have different strengths and
But they're all
weaknesses.
strong everywhere.
Yes, but they're I think they're in that similar mold. Each of them have different dials that have been turned up in different ways, and it's how they use those dials. And it's a very fun conversation.
I think it's a lot closer than a lot of people will probably admit. I'll be honest. Like it's a very close conversation. Like,
well, that's
very
why
close
like if you wanted to tell me you had Allen above everyone, I'd be like, okay. If you wanted to tell me you had Mahomes, I'd be like, okay. If you wanted to tell me you have Herbert, I'd be like, okay. I don't think any of those
Except we didn't do the okay. We were all like, wait, what?
Didn't. You said, no. Whoa, you idiot.
No. That's not what happened. I even specifically said, I didn't say whoa because I thought it was a bad take. I was just surprised that was your answer. Like,
no, it's fair.
I think you can list any of them in the same way that people want to be like, oh, when they rank like Brady ahead of Rodgers right now, or Rodgers ahead of Brady. Like, I think it depends on what you're looking for.
The Brady and Rodgers one gets really murky.
But I think this is murky too. Again, it's what you even said it, Kendall, like what you like in a quarterback leads you towards, one, it's the youth piece, but two, you like that methodical, surgical progression passing type of approach. Therefore, you skew towards that person while recognizing the strengths in the others. I think a lot of it comes down to what you like. And again, that's what I think makes the conversation so fun, and how these teams are and how these quarterbacks are, because they're similar, but it's like different, but same but different. And you can each of them just have different dials turned up in terms of mobility and how they play the game and how they process and where they process and what they do. Really fun conversation. Yeah, I wasn't saying whoa. I was because it was bad. I was just surprised that was your. I saw
like
smirk.
Russ called it back though.
I saw
was like, wait, but we
smirk.
didn't do what you just said we would do.
No, we had. I saw the smirk on your face. I was like, what is Kendall going to say? And then you were like, I have Herbert one, and I was just like, whoa. But not whoa because it was bad. Whoa because I was just surprised. But I think it's fair. That's what makes, if you're just a football fan, that's what's so cool about this next crop of quarterbacks. Even there's some people who like Burrow, because of his anticipation and his ability to put the ball downfield and what he brings with his intangibles. Like, I have him below those guys, but you can make a case, like a genuine case, for a lot of the young QBs in this league, which is nice, knowing that a lot of the proven guys are kind of, if you're the NFL, they're starting to make their way out and going out to pasture a little bit.
The NFL's in good hands.
Yeah, you got this new crop coming up. Ooh, very fun, very fun. Let's go to our last segment that we got here. Player of the day, rookie of the day, drive of the day. We'll start with player of the day. Kendall, who's your player of the day?
I mean, it sucks, but I'd probably have to go with Jamar Chase.
Okay.
I thought, it was between him and Justin Jefferson, but I thought because Justin Jefferson was just kind of like always open with breakdowns and stuff like that. And obviously he made more plays than just broken down plays, but I felt like even in the loss that the Bengals had, Jamar Chase was doing absolutely everything he could,
especially with Higgins going down,
his team back into an area where they could win. And that one touchdown that they didn't call, where it seemed like the ball was across the goal line as it was on his right.
Yeah, that cost me fantasy points.
I'm sure it did, and it, for whatever reason, didn't get reviewed, and then they lose 2 yards on a rushing play the next play. There were just so many perfect plays between him and Burrow, where they're just always on the right page, right place, right time, everything. The way he can just beat people at will with his athleticism and route running nuance. Like, he is, we talk about the NFL being in good hands. It's equally at the wide receiver position. He had an absolutely amazing day. It's a shame that there were as many takeaways as there were in that game for Jamar Chase owners, because I feel like he could have gotten a lot more fantasy points this week. Maybe he might not have if they were as dominant in this game. Maybe Mixon would have gotten the points according to game script, but I thought he was absolutely dominant today, despite the way that game went for Cincinnati.
Very fair. Russ, your player of the day.
It's got to be Pat Mahomes, man. How can you not? 3 for 39, 360 yards, 5 touchdowns, loses Tyreek Hill. We just kind of talked about it. Everybody said he's, maybe going to hit a cliff and start falling and descending as a player. And he didn't do any of that today. I mean,
No.
he torched Arizona, and yeah, he looks like, the MVP type of quarterback that we have seen from him, and 5 touchdowns in week 1. If he keeps this up, he's going to be setting all kinds of records. So he's for me, from what I've seen today, he's kind of the guy. The other one for a close second, I would have said Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson, but probably honestly would have been probably Jalen Hurts, just from a game where I kind of watched like from start to finish type deal. I don't have his numbers up in front of me, but like it was hard for the Lions to really like put a spy on him. He at times could just run at will.
His legs were a problem.
He took some shots in that game. Once he got going with AJ Brown also had a great day today. I think he had like almost 190 receptions or 190
receptions.
Holy
crap! What an amazing day.
I was gonna say reception yards, and I was like, that's not right.
That still kind of counts, I guess.
Yeah,
yards generated by receptions.
Right. But yeah, so like just what he was able to do would have been a close second, but Pat Mahomes for me.
Mahomes was up there for me. A lot of people in the chat are going up the love for Saquon. 18 carries, 164 yards. He converted that 2-pointer, that 2-pointer was all him. Tennessee had that play scouted, and that was just Saquon, whether it's will or talent, just being like, that was just him being like, no, I'm going to get this ball in there. He's up there. I'm going to go with the guy who's on our graphic, and I'm going with Minkah Fitzpatrick. 14 tackles, 10 of them being solo, 1 pass defense, 1 interception, 1 touchdown. He was everywhere again for a defense that doesn't have standouts at corner. I like Cam Sutton, and he had a good game today, but he can get beat from time to time. Minkah was just an eraser back there for so much of the day. And then he's that guy who's making, I can't tell you how many times I've seen some runs break through, and he literally is the safety, like the last line of defense, and he makes the tackle, and he just finishes Joe Mixon. Like, he does so much back there. And on a day where we led this segment with Steelers-Bengals, I think Steelers-Bengals was the game of the day. That defense carried them. I think Minkah, I don't think there's a right answer here. Mahomes is definitely up there for me. I watched that Lions-Eagles game. I liked Hurts. I liked AJ Brown. I respect what Saquon did. But Minkah Fitzpatrick for me, given how he elevated the performance of that defense and how that defense won them that game, Minkah is my guy for today. How about Rookie of the Day? Keep going in the same order. Kendall, what do you got for Rookie of the Day?
There were a lot of rookie wide receivers that I was thinking about, but I stuck with Jahan Dotson just because is he yours too, Russ?
Yep, I think all of us.
I figured he probably
that
game-winning touchdown was beautiful. How
and that's what
sealed it off the ground. Like,
that's what sealed it for me. Like, the fact that he had only 3 receptions and 2 of them were for touchdowns, and 1 of them was a clutch go-ahead touchdown. I mean, that's huge from a guy that I know all 3 of us liked during the scouting process. Yeah. I think he had the best hands in the class, but then also fantastic route running, and it's translating early. Like, you see it right away. He understands how to separate. He separates at a level that just translates at the NFL level, and you can see it's taking place right away. Thankfully, that entire Washington offense just looks a little bit better with just marginally better quarterback play. It's wild what the offense looks like out there. And yeah, it looks like Dotson's really just starting off strong. I mean, arguably the best day out of any wide receiver rookie.
That's very fair. And a cool performance for their a cool triplet set out there with him and Curtis Samuel, and then Terry McLaurin, who I truly believe if Terry McLaurin had consistent quarterback play, he could be as high as a top 5 receiver in the NFL with his skill set and his work ethic and what he does. Very cool to see us all on Jahan Dotson. Again, I think circling back to our draft evaluation love for him with how much praise we all heaped upon Jahan Dotson.
I will add Malcolm Rodriguez to the conversation for
your boy in Detroit. Very fair.
Naturally, yeah.
I got to give a little love to him because there were times where like he would get beat today. But there's a play out there where Jason Kelce comes to him and he legit hip tosses that dude. Like, no problem. Like, it's crazy how strong he is. There's a tackle in that game where he's like his knee and like leg are getting bent like that way, and he somehow gets the tackle and takes the guy and goes that way. And it's like, I don't understand how he was doing it, but he is very strong.
Stout does for you, man, that low center of gravity.
Yeah, and he is very, very rough around the edges, but like
Mhm.
so strong and very talented, and like kind of a spark to the middle of that defense. And we didn't get into that game today. That's fine. It's probably for the best, because I probably would have turned this off because I would have been fired up. But it's one of those things where like the players, honestly, sure, there was some mistakes. Malcolm Rodriguez was not really part of those mistakes. The coach did them wrong in that game today. So it is what it
Very
is.
fair. Malcolm Rodriguez has been on a fast track, it seems like, to superstardom since camp
Yeah.
hit. Like, he was doing great in camp, and then he shows up on Hard Knocks a little bit, and he's killing it in the preseason. Like, and the fact that, sixth round pick, and just kind of like an afterthought seemingly in this draft, and he earns basically a starting spot on this scrappy, feisty defense, and he keeps making plays. He flies around like a bullet, physical, violent. Very nice reference and callback for you there. Now we move on to the drive of the day. I'll go with mine first. I'm going to go with the game-winning drive for the Steelers in overtime. 8 plays, 45 yards, 56 seconds. They get the ball and start out on their own 20-yard line, and Trubisky starts out with an incomplete pass. Then on second down, hits Deontay Johnson for 9 yards. Then on 3rd and 1, Cincinnati jumps off sides. Trubisky scrambles. He rolls out, fires back across his body, hits Freiermuth over the middle, who runs for 26 yards. Hits Freiermuth again later in the drive, and it sets up the game-winning field goal later. I think just that piece for a game where the offense was carried by the defense, and the offense literally had this one time to be like, just go out and win the game and just do something. They answered the bell, and kudos good for Trubisky and that group there. He had some really clutch plays in a hostile environment against a team that everybody picked. Again, Russ, you mentioned it. Cincinnati was a 6.5 point favorite. Steelers were kind of an afterthought in this game. The defense won it and kept them in the game. But when push came to shove and the Steelers offense had an opportunity to seal it and end it and be done, they did. That was my drive of the day. Kendall, what do you got?
Mine goes to the Bears with 1 minute and 36 seconds left in the third. They had a 84-yard, 10-play drive. A lot of this has to do with the conditions. I mean, honestly, putting together a 10-play, 84-yard drive that ends in a touchdown in those conditions to take the lead against a good 49ers defense, it really pushed the needle a lot for me. I thought it was a great drive, really steady dose of pass and run, understanding the circumstances with the weather, and knowing that you probably should put the ball on the ground. You should run the football a lot and then mix in some play action. And that's exactly what they did. They got lucky a little bit with an unnecessary roughness call to move the chains after a late Justin Fields slide. They get that call, get the first down, and then a little bit later, they hit that play action to the other St. Brown, the non-Lions St. Brown, and it's an 18-yard touchdown. And
I don't know how it was lost on me that the St. Browns are brothers. I don't know why I didn't make that connection. And then the game hit, and I was like, oh my God, they are brothers. And I guess their dad was like a Mr. Universe and like all these stuff during the game. I don't know why I was just like, oh, 2 guys named St. Brown. That's cool. And then I was just like, oh, they're related. Like,
no, they're related.
And I watched them so much in college and so much like in the league. And like, I felt like such an idiot that I was like, of course they're brothers. Like, I was very disappointed in myself, but very fair. Russ, what do you got for drive of the day?
I was going to go with the Steelers, and don't mind me, I'm just writing down timestamps for things like clipping this stuff. But I was going to go with the Steelers, but I want to be a little different, and I'm going to give it to the Giants here because of
good call.
That 12-play, 75-yard drive. It lasted over, almost 4.5 minutes, and there was a lot of stuff from Daniel Jones there where, he did okay. He didn't turn the football over. Daniel Jones, like similar to Derek Carr, right? Derek Carr's going to Derek Carr. Daniel Jones is going to Daniel Jones. He's always going to have a bad fumble. And if he doesn't, it's good. And it's a good thing. And he had a pick the drive before. He had a fumble earlier in the game. The guy basically is 2 turnovers a game type of player. But he didn't on this final drive when the game was on the line. And they hit the 2-minute warning. That's 4th and 1. He sneaks it, gets it. Barkley does his thing. I mean, they really relied on Barkley there down the stretch, but Daniel Jones delivers the 2nd and goal touchdown pass with a minute left. Barkley did his thing on the 2-point conversion, and props to the coaching staff for going for 2, putting the faith in it. And obviously, a missed field goal that happens. 47 yards, a lot of missed field goals today. But but for the Giants to do what they did, tip my hat to them because it's probably one of maybe 5 or 6 wins that they get this year.
The fighting Giants, the fighting Brian Dabols come out and get a nice victory on away territory versus the Tennessee Titans. A team, I think that's also a team, the Titans, like they lose A.J. Brown. They were the number 1 seed last year. They lose in the playoffs to the Bengals. They come into this year, and then I think everybody's on the Colts to win the AFC South, but the Colts don't perform well today. And then the Titans lose to the Giants, and that AFC South just seems to be
winless.
I was like, nobody has a win in the AFC South. I just connected that because 2 teams tied. The Jags lost. And then, cool pick today, though, for Travon Walker for the Jags, number 1 pick.
He
but
balled out today, too.
He did. He played well. Winless division. So sad, but we'll see. I mean, I think it speaks to, I think the Colts still come out, but who are the Titans going to be? Not an ideal loss. But then again, last year, too, they lost on opening day to the Cardinals and got mollywopped by the Cards and got absolutely thrashed. And they came back and were the 1 seed in the AFC. So we'll see what comes from.
That is 2 mollywop references on the show today. Very nicely done.
I'm a huge fan of that verbiage and that phrase. I try to work it in usually at least once an episode. So it was more conscious for me. I feel like I cheated, but teach their own.
Same.
And that's going to do it for us here. Yeah, fair. Yeah, we like it. We're just going to use it. The maiden voyage of Cover One Football Weekly. I want to thank everyone who joined us on this show live. If you're watching now, listening later, watching later, whatever have you, if you enjoyed this episode, please drop a like here on YouTube. Please, please, please. And thank you, whether you're still here with us now or you're watching later. If you're listening on one of the podcasting apps or platforms, please rate and review. Regardless, podcasting apps, YouTube, any of that, please subscribe to Cover One Football Weekly. If you enjoyed this content, of course, tell your family and friends and loved ones about how awesome this show was, or if you thought the show was terrible, mainly because of Kendall, that I'm sorry, apologize. He's contractually, part of the show. We can't do anything about it. We fought it. We tried super hard, but he's got really powerful lawyers and a really good agent. So
It's true.
Yeah, I just can't get through the red tape. I think Tim says, thanks guys. Appreciate the show. I think by guys, he meant not Kendall again.
Oh, definitely not.
Yeah, definitely. No, you see, you're gracious enough to understand. So
I understand it, and I know how hard my agent works.
I like Michael Kupsu. Thank you guys, except Kendall for his Josh Allen.
I'm gonna get dragged.
I was gonna say, dude, that's gonna be rough for you. I don't envy you because that's gonna be a promo for this
Yeah,
episode. And people are gonna come.
It's
for you.
time stamped. You're
Sorry,
screwed.
bro. Yeah,
Whatever.
It's not gonna be a good.
I don't
Whatever.
agree with Bill's Mafia a lot of the time.
But
anyways.
yeah, but we're gonna keep riding together, and so we appreciate everyone joining us on this first episode as we continue to do this and hopefully build, some more momentum and gain some more steam as we go forward here. So whether you were a Bills fan and you already know of us here at Cover One, thank you for tuning in. If you were a fan of another team or just football in general, thank you very much for joining us on this episode. Again, brand new episode. So any kind words, reviews, feedback, word of mouth, shares on social media, any type of anything to help us continue to spread the word of this show so that we continue to grow and kind of plant more flags as this brand and we grow and expand and do all these things. So we appreciate any and every ounce of support. And I also appreciate Mr. Kendall Mirsky and Mr. Russel Brown for doing this. All 3 of us tonight, we are very excited for the potential of this show. And we kicked around a lot of ideas, and I'll speak for, myself personally. There isn't anybody else I'd rather do this show with from this brand. And I'm very excited for the potential that we have in it. And you guys crushed it tonight, as I hoped you would. And I knew you would. And yeah, hopefully this is, the start of something beautiful, something magical to come. Again, thank you to everyone who tuned in live, later, view, listen, download, whatever have you. Please rate and view and subscribe. Please drop a like on this video. Love the positive comments that are starting to come through. Thank you very much. Spin's already ahead of it. Spin said, put it in the shorts. That way all of us Bills Mafia can roast Kendall. That's definitely going to be a short. It's got to be somehow something.
Just take out my explanation of why. Just leave, the front end.
That's it. Just put how
15
Kendall
seconds.
ranks them. That's it. I was literally going to say that.
Josh Allen sucks.
That's it. Label it Josh Allen sucks. And then put Kendall's I think it's Herbert, Mahomes, Allen.
I know how this social media stuff works.
It's over for Kendall. I feel so bad.
Well, and he already just said Josh Allen sucks.
I know, right?
Now,
I put it on there. All you have to do is
now I can chop this all up, and you are screwed, my friend.
Kendall, what do you think of Josh Allen? Boom, there you go. So you take that right there and then chop it with him being like, Josh Allen sucks. Nobody's going to know it's out of order.
No one
Boom.
And then he's going to go Herbert, Mahomes, Allen. Josh Allen sucks.
Like MJF on AEW. That's what it's going to be. Fantastic.
Absolutely
This has been a
draft.
good start. You guys were fantastic. What do you got? What do you got?
I was just gonna say he's the MJF of the group. Awesome.
It could be. They're also roughly the same age. Both prodigies, kind of the pillars of a new show. Got a lot of similarities between you and MJF. His last name begins with an M, but MJF's first name begins with an M, so you guys are similar. We're getting off the rails here. This has been fantastic. We appreciate everyone. Yeah. We will see you next week once again live, 7:15 p.m. Eastern next Sunday. Yeah, as Michael said, this is going to be a fun season of this show. Most definitely. Thank you very much for your support and for being here, Michael. And again, everybody who joined us live, later, whatever have you, thank you very much. We're very excited for this new endeavor here at Cover One. We hope you and your family and friends and loved ones are all doing well. Take care of one another. Be kind to one another. Be safe, happy, healthy, all of those things. We will see you next week. This has been the debut, first episode of Cover One Football Weekly. We'll see you next week.